Oh snap, there it is. It's a new episode of WWFIO. I almost feel like that's a radio call sign where if I had a hacky radio voice, WWFIO, tuning in, Chewy and Fuckface in the morning, etc., etc. How's it going, everybody? I am in the mood to record another episode, so let's do that. Well, actually, I lied. I'm in the mood to record a little bit, but I also want to present something that was recorded a little bit earlier, a couple months ago, maybe like 2 by now, because in typical Woolie will figure it out fashion, it wouldn't be fresh content if I wasn't actually just dropping an introduction to something that has been pre-recorded. So, but what I am doing is taking some questions, and you guys have been sending some pretty cool ones to wooliecast@gmail.com. And they've been a garden variety, and I think I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the actual segment when it comes in. But I appreciate it. I appreciate the questions coming in. In particular, I appreciate the ones that are on subject matter, that are on point. There's obviously some questions that come in that are a little bit more, hey, when are you going to LP this? Or here's a thing for Go Tell Pat. Or here's a Castle Super Beasts kind of question or something. And it's like, well, that's not what this email's for. But, thanks for thinking of me. I'm probably going to skip that email, though. But here's one I won't skip. But let's start out with one on the subject of stagnation from Austin Fulton, aka Tower Blue, says, Dear Woolie, I'm some faceless guy on the internet who enjoys what you do and what you've done, and I come bearing a question and an answer that I hope reaches you. I've recently quit my job in working in a factory to pursue literally anything else. I was in a poor mindset, unhappy, and I spent any free time I set aside on distracting myself because mindless menial work that could be done by a robot is soul-sucking. And while I didn't follow through on my plan to have a second job before I quit, I don't regret it, but I find myself falling into a dilemma. My real problem stems from what has come after. I've been out of high school for a while now, but I still have creative aspirations to write and carve out something of my own for others to appreciate, or even for myself. I'm not delusional enough to believe that I can just coast along and shit out enough mediocrity to keep myself afloat, so I will be working in the near future. My real issue is my own motivation, or discipline, or something that has been discussed on this podcast by yourself and Eli before. Some time has passed since I quit, and I'm still in that coping routine, distracting myself from doing productive things, like I never quit at all. I'm dragging my feet and distracting myself from pursuing what I want to do creatively, but I have nothing but free time. Then when I get a new job and settle into the new routine... Oh, excuse me, that was a question. Hold on a second. If I'm dragging my feet and distracting myself from pursuing what I want to do creatively when I have nothing but free time, then when I get a new job and settle into a new routine, or rather, the old one I never left, isn't that the same thing as giving up? It feels bad. Really, really bad. I'm mailing in and asking about how to develop the discipline to build and keep momentum on what I want to do. Sitting here with all this nothing is bitter, and I hate it. It's not a question of quality, but rather the idea that if I can't just bring myself to even start, do I not want it bad enough? With my question out of the way, I wanted to let you know that you should keep doing this podcast to whatever end you see fit. Even if you don't see this, I feel like sending you this mail is a step in the right direction because I'm not just sitting in front of my computer doing nothing, so you're already helping. Good job, keep it up. With far too much sincerity, Austin. Wow. All right. P.S. Holy shit, keeping this letter real hurts like a son of a bitch. You kept it real, Austin. You kept it really real. Was really good. Yeah, man, that is... I bet you're going to hear from a lot of people, like, talking about how relatable that is, because that's extraordinarily relatable. One of the weirdest things is how much we desire, crave, need a break from having a shitty, overwhelming job or something that is just crushing, depressing. Like the fact that you want nothing but free time when you're punching in on that clock, and when you're overwhelmed, and when your schedule is just like blasted and you can't do the things that you want to do for fun. And then suddenly when you're given the exact inverse, when you're given nothing but empty open schedule and as much free time as you want, you almost just as quickly feel like a mixture of awful things. One, of course, is being spoiled for choice and paralyzed by the amount of things you can do and not knowing what to do. Another is just motivation, laziness, the overall, like, perhaps lack of drive that kicks in, or perhaps just like tiredness and whatnot sometimes. Maybe your sleep schedule is messed up. Maybe there's other things going on in your life that make it so that when you're sitting around doing nothing, you're still not in tip-top shape. And of course, all of that gets amplified by a sense of guilt from not getting anything done. And the more you think about how much you're not getting done, even though you have a ton of free time, the worse and worse it gets until it spirals into a really bad place. Been there, done that. Not a fan of it. I don't think anyone who's been there can tell you that, like, it's an easy place to be, because you feel really dumb because you're like, man, I wanted nothing but free time and here it is and I don't know what to do with it. That is absolutely a predicament. That's a tricky one to figure out. And I'm going to steal a page from Rogan here and say that, like, this is one of those times when you can feel motivation come and go, especially when you're in the middle of something else that is like rote and mindless, and your mind is drifting away to find anything else to entertain itself with. You can suddenly find yourself with the willpower and the motivation to follow your dreams, do these things, get out there, get creative, and work on projects and find ways to put your ideas out into the world. But motivation is temporary. It's fleeting. It comes in waves and it goes and it disperses. It's gaseous. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. What isn't temporary and what fights back against fleeting willpower is discipline, right? And so the idea is that you take what your willpower wants to do and you reinforce it with discipline, which is a game plan that you are forcing yourself to stick to no matter what, come hell or high water, no matter what kind of day you're having, no matter what is going on outside. You know that at this time of day, when you get up, you're going to go do this task. That defeats the fact that you're feeling no motivation today, because as amazing as the human brain is, it's imperfect. And like, if we could actually control the sliders that make up our character sheet, you know what I mean? We'd be able to we'd operate on full power all day until it was empty. And then we'd go eat and pass out and hibernate for months and then come back up and just be at 100% the whole time. But obviously it just doesn't work that way, man. So, I think discipline is what protects you from this. And this is the same, like, trick that once you learn it applies to anything else that's hard in life that you want to accomplish, right? In this case, for me, it doesn't just apply to working on things creatively, because, I didn't really know how to use it back when I was working on a lot of my game and art visions. But I learned how to do this when I started working out and using discipline as a way to, like, defeat your own brain before your brain has a chance to defeat itself is the best way out. I think if you literally create a schedule, right? Take a physical whiteboard or a piece of paper and stick it on your fridge and draw a calendar, or, just do whatever. Make it just a bullet point list if need be, but just write down, like, this is what you're going to do for the rest of this week or for the rest of this month. This is how often you're going to do it. This is the exact schedule you're going to adhere to. And this is the time frame. And it doesn't have to be all day. It can be a reasonable amount of time. depending on what it is. But like the point remains is that you have a schedule you're going to fall into with all your free time, and you're going to adhere to that no matter how you're feeling about it. And I've mentioned this previously, but like, there's when the time comes around and you're like, I don't feel like doing this right now, or you start to put it off, like use that. Like, it's hard to really fully explain this, but it's like, you have to kind of second guess yourself and create like almost like a mental trap, right? Where you use the moment you have one thought that says, maybe I can put this off, use that as a prompt to immediately start doing the action, right? So don't like the moment you have that first thought, that means use that as a reaction to be like, oh, I've got to start it now. Like, that's your green light. The green light to get started is the moment you think, maybe I can do this later. And then once you're already doing it, you can actually try to see how well, your procrastination holds up against, the actual gas pedal being hit and the fact that you're moving forward. I think that's a really helpful plan. In particular, that like I said, when that comes to working out, it has an added benefit, and something that I probably wanted to touch on in general was like when you start when you use this for like something where you're doing like a physical task or some sort of activity that's like draining in that way, it's using so much effort to like go and do that exercise and get yourself physically tired that you don't have time to mentally doubt yourself or be stuck in your head about what shitty feelings you're kind of going through in a way. It's an awesome way to just cleanse that out. That came in handy recently for me, in particular, by heading over to boxing while not feeling great. And just like getting physically exhausted is an excellent way to just like override any like stressful and anxious thoughts with like feelings of physical exhaustion, like literally forcing your body to sweat and stress and do hard work. And then suddenly it just makes like non-physical things. It makes, thoughts and sort of worries tend to become a lot less potent when you sweat it out in a way. It's like, it's a bit of that like distraction technology that a lot of people are aware of and use, except you're combining distraction technology with like exhaustion in a completely different way. That's in a physical exhaustion as opposed to mental exhaustion. And and after that, you kind of come out of it being like, well, that completely took my mind off of what I was working on and how I was feeling, and probably drained a lot of like the juice that was keeping it going. It kind of drained the reservoir there. And you get to feel good about the fact that you accomplished something. And that also starts to replace some of that negativity as well. So it's a really cool trick for like replacing being in a bad mental space, I find. And it's helped me as recently as a week or two ago. So I think get on that discipline train, and use the idea of forcing yourself to do it no matter what, no matter how much you hate it. Get something done and do it for X amount of time and do it planned on a schedule. And that way you can defeat the ever flux willpower, that just comes and goes and does whatever the fuck it wants and feels great when it's here and then feels garbage when it leaves. At the same time, use that to also feel as if you're not that you're not wasting all your time, but like you're taking advantage and you're actually seizing the free time and the opportunities that you've created for yourself. Like you said, you're realistic about the fact that you're going to start working again, and that sounds like good because creative endeavors don't always work out. However, like you don't want to fail at it without having felt like you gave it an earnest shot. So by actually sticking to a regimen and giving it a real shot, that'll at least put things on the path they would need to succeed. And if they don't succeed, well, again, you are doing it the way you're giving it the best possible chance it has, So I hope that helps. So Cassandra says, "Hey, Woolie, when you give up on a project or are pretty sure you've given up on it, do you keep all the material? Furthermore, when I need a new product or even a brand new project, do you ever go back to the trash pile to salvage parts? Have you ever salvaged parts only to build one huge mecha failure? And how do your past failures inspire you new projects and failures?" I think the most obvious thought right here is the fact that, yeah, your past failures definitely influence your new projects because you're standing on those corpses. You're standing on the body of the dead thing you made, and it never quite decomposes. It just kind of sits around because the things that you liked enough to want to write about or draw or think about for that long are still going to be a part of you. You might grow out of, if it's a, let's say it's some sort of fad or something that is just kind of like a temporary thing that you enjoy. There's a core idea or concept that you're attracted to begin with, that it still exists. And that never goes away. So to some degree, I think, even if you don't, the ideal situation is you learn from the mistakes of the past and you use it to make sure that the better new projects in the future are improved. But if that doesn't happen, it doesn't change the part where like you still have something in you that is like, something that is the catalyst for your previous projects, and those failed things, like there's going to be elements that you enjoy that cause you to go into those projects to begin with that you're gonna bring to the future. I don't think you can avoid it. I think you can swerve as hard as you want the other way. God, I might need to fact check this one before I say it, but I remember being told that Hideaki Anno directed Kare Kano, His and Her Circumstances, a super duper romantic love novel anime right after Evangelion, as a flip it on its head swerve to just go in the complete opposite direction from whatever the fuck Evangelion is. And there's still like, even if you're going the other way completely with it, you're still pursuing a core thing. There's still a reason why you're picking up this project and you find it interesting. In this case, I would say that like, even if it's way more traditional and tropey, it feels like I think Anno would have picked up a project like that based on its exploration of human relationships. So that's all super vague. I definitely think that I would use pieces and bits, or this character just kind of floated in the not on the back burner or not on the front burner, but just kind of floated around the burner, So that's an idea that I think a lot of people use, and I definitely know myself. I'm prone to that, especially if it's a thing that I don't want to let go. So if I have, one of the projects I worked on involved designing a cast of 8 or so characters, and they're all unique and interesting in ways that I liked, but, not all of it, but the project didn't work out. But I'm like, you know what? I liked this character and that one, and I think they would fit, or a modified version of them would fit into this other setting for a completely different thing. And if you can make it work and it doesn't seem like you're putting a square peg into a round hole, then go for it, do it if you feel that it fits. But if you kind of just don't want to let go either, and you can make it work, then I see no problem there. I definitely do that. How to deal with exceptionally unpopular interests. Steven says, after listening to episode 2 of the podcast, I found myself reinvigorated to create something and share my interests with everyone. But what I'm most passionate about is so unknown to most of the English-speaking world that it seems impossible to even begin talking about. The thing in question is a board game called Go. It's actually very simple rule-wise, but the complexity of actually playing the game makes it very difficult to put into words. And telling/teaching people about it, even close friends, feels like I'm talking to a wall and nothing actually sinks in. I'm good enough at the game where I can teach other players and make videos about that, but to actually bring new people into the fold seems impossible. To make this a bit simpler, how can I let my passion shine through my work when people don't even understand what I'm talking about? This is an interesting as fuck question, because not only do I relate to this on the level of trying to do similar things with fighting games, I will relate to this directly in that Go is my favorite board game. It's the shit. It is awesome. It's better than every other board game in a one-on-one sense that I've ever played, and I've had so much fun. And I fully got on board with it in the most, like, as you'd expect way, exposed through Hikaru no Go. Went, oh, this is an anime that's about this thing, let me check it out. And then I watched Hikaru no Go and I liked it. And then the anime got me into playing Go and picking it up and trying to get a little bit better at it. With no one to play against except for Josh from the previous episode, who also learned how to play. And then occasionally at anime conventions, there'd be a Go table somewhere, and like there'd be one guy with a book, and he'd be like, I hope somebody comes along, and I'd be like, oh man, like, let's do some 9x9, you know? Go is an amazing board game. It is absolutely correct in what you're saying, that nobody knows what the fuck it is here. The very few people that do know how awesome it is, but if you're gonna try to passionately get people excited about this thing, you're going to have a long uphill battle ahead of you. Now, fighting games, you know, I feel like myself and friends have spent more time talking about how to get people into fighting games than we've spent actually getting them in. And that's not to say we haven't, because after years of running tournaments and like trying multiple shows that appeal to both casual and hopefully slightly more intermediate audiences, it's still a discussion topic that comes around every time. It's just to say that it's such it feels like you can sink so much time into that process, you know, trying to go like, why or how do I get other people to like this thing? Because it's super good and it's worth it. There's no clear answer. And a lot of the times, you know, when something is kind of obfuscated behind a wall of difficulty, like a character action game, for example, there's no amazing cutscene or character design in Go that might bring someone in to begin with from just a stylistic point of view. You know, unfortunately, someone who doesn't know about the level of combat depth in any Platinum game or Itsuno game might still enjoy the characters and the wacky world and the awesome style that the protagonists are you know, flouting around. So Go is a board with a bunch of white and black pieces. But I still think that depending on your voice, and depending on, when I say voice, I don't mean your actual voice, I mean like your intent and how you express that intent. If you make videos, or if you make, I think that's probably one of the best ways, but you can use any of the mediums that are available to you nowadays to reach people. You can make a series of tweets, quite frankly, but if you wanted to share how awesome Go was, I think if you simply conveyed that with, you know, something, what I was describing is that, like, you know, you have something like style and character design to attract people to Bayonetta or to Devil May Cry and to Metal Gear Rising. And in the case of Go, like, if you replaced the absence of that character design with your own enthusiasm, so the game itself is good. I know that it's good. You know that it's good. This is very fun once people learn it. But, like, what is someone going to see that initially attracts their eye to even consider it? What is going to be the like the awesome character design with their weapons and the swords and the stylish combos. What's going to be the thing that brings them in from just that outside perspective? You can be that, right? If you have a particular way of talking about the subject that is excited and interesting, I would think if you were funny about it, if you was very like entertaining on just a raw level, like you can sell anything, right? I think if you have enough personality and if you write it strongly, you can create little skits, or you can create blogs or vlogs, or you can write, text even in such a way, a series of images. Like you can do anything that, like, if it resonates strongly enough and creates enough of a strong reaction, and it's associated with the introduction of Go as a concept, that can still work. Someone can tune in because they liked the other aspect of it. They saw something on the surface that was interesting, and they went, what's going on over here? This shit's hilarious, or this shit is cool, or this shit is fun, or, there's a million other ways to address it. But I think that you basically have to kind of add a little bit of a sheen to it. You have to put a sleek veneer on the Go board and on the pieces, and you have to, have something to, get that initial shiny attraction point so that they can see that there might be something here. And I think if people can share and pass around by word of mouth or by retweeting or by just pulling up their phone and showing it to their friends sitting around in a parking lot somewhere, if they can share this because it's like it's got an appeal that they can get into based on the thing you're bringing to it, and then also get into the concept or get into the actual content, you've got yourself a winner. So can you sell a hard concept? And the answer is you can, but I think nowadays we've learned quite a bit more about it. I think we saw how God Hand was received back in the day, and we saw how that game was a absolute well of depth, but the surface of it being goofy and clippy and weird and just overall unapologetically jank is something that game journalists couldn't get past, and it got that infamous 3 out of 10. Nowadays we know a bit better, and I think that if you have yourself a nice Go lesson that is sandwiched in between Raiden tossing a Metal Gear Ray into the air and slicing it down the middle as the chorus kicks in, people might be interested in sticking around to learn a thing or two about Go. What does this analogy mean? I don't know exactly what it means, but all I'm saying is the first thing that comes to mind is I know how good Go is, and if I were to try to tell people about it or get people into it, I would make an explosively over-the-top excited video about teaching people how good Go is and about how fun it is to reach in and how the sounds of pulling those pieces out of the bowl are just satisfying, and the slapping it down with your index finger in a specific way and sliding the piece into place is a satisfying sound to hear, and it feels good to do, and the little clicks and all of these little things are so awesome. I would definitely just fucking go to town on that and make it unbelievable and absurdly make it absurd and try to get people in on that as an idea while still ultimately sticking to the core points and not saying anything that's not 100% accurate to the subject matter. For example, if I wanted to tell people about how cool the story in Kirby games was, my first instinct would be to go and put together a series of videos going over the top with how dramatic and serious and edgy everything is, and possibly even talking in a dead serious voice and presenting things in a ridiculous manner, paying homage to eldritch horrors as I tried to describe what was actually going on in the world of Kirby, if I were to do this, right? Yet at the same time, everything I would say, no matter how ridiculous I'm being about it, would be actually based in facts and researched lore from the series. And I'd make sure that everything I'm using is absolutely referenced so that it is airtight. However, I want to get people in, so I'm going to go a little bit ham with it. If I were to want to do something like teach people about Kirby. So that's just my way to approach these types of things. Ursula Cat, how's it going? Dear Woolie, I know you explained why you like green before. Everyone always chooses red or blue, standard player 1 and player 2 colors, but the hipster adjacent impulse in you wanted to go for green, a similar but less popular color. But since this is your time in your podcast, I want more. Since you took the color on, have you noted any pull towards themes of cleanliness, nature, money, or rebirth? Has green taken on a meaning for you that isn't in Color Symbolism 101? Sometimes, when I see the color green, something inside me says, haha, cool reference to Woolie. Like you invented the color or something. Always thirsty, I guess. Ursula Cat. P.S. Lots of what you said applies to me, someone who's striving to become a soulless number cruncher. Well, Ursula, the short answer is no. I simply am pleased by the way the light hits my eye when I perceive the color green. It's just that simple. I enjoy the color, and there's not much to it in terms of a representative or symbolic meaning. I haven't really at all thought about that. I know that because it happens to be the color that I choose, and when I dye my hair that way, that leads to like other people to kind of ping pong it to those places. So yeah, my hair, I got green dreads, they fade out, so sometimes they look a little mossy, when the blue when I mix in blue with it. And when I had that moss colored hair look, then Grandma Swamp, because that's the character in Shovel Knight, appeared, and then that became a whole thing. So I know that other folks are sort of quick to make those connections, but I don't. I simply just enjoy the color for what it is, and it would be interesting if there were other aspects to it, but it really isn't that complex. It's not that deep. It's just it's a pretty thing to me. And I happen to also like the colors that it blends well with, and I like the colors that it's complementary to. So that's it. Zach says, hey, Woolie, just found out about your podcast today, and I'm catching up on the short backlog. Big fan of Super Best Friends. Still a bit upset over the end, but a rapidly growing fan of your work, specifically writing, because I listened to the episode about anxiety. It was a couple of months back, and I was hoping you were doing well and finding help. Just wanted to give you props for talking about it and reminding you that you're not alone. I love the game designs you talked about. I'm a wannabe game designer myself, currently a security software engineer. Have a boatload of ideas that are half-started, long-abandoned attempts to make games. Every few months I spend a couple weeks messing around with a game, an idea, before moving on to the new interest, more enthralled by the idea, so I never really disappoint myself. But I'm not completing one, though, so it's a pattern I'll probably repeat ad nauseum. Well, yeah. As you mentioned, not really a question, but more of a statement. That's interesting. Thank you, by the way, for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Thanks for listening. I think the idea that comes to mind when you talk about this and how you kind of repeat taking these little projects on and these like thought experiments is totally fine. I think it's healthy, and I think it's fun to do that. I think it shows that you like legitimately enjoy a part of this process, and you keep coming back to it. Of course, everything that comes out the gate and hits the public eye has to go through a less fun side of it. It's not always going to be the cool brainstorming stuff, and it's not always going to be the fun of seeing the first character design or something like that. Like sometimes you're going to go through the harder sides. QA is not a fun example. Fixing bugs and or taking feedback from your first reveal, when people see it and you feel really highly about the thing, and then people kind of go, you know what? I don't feel what you feel. In fact, I kind of think it's shit. And you have to go, oh man, oh geez. That's part of it too. What I think though is that you sound like the kind of person that would be really, really comfortable and have a lot of fun at a game jam. So, game jams are, sometimes there's monthly ones in your city, sometimes there's annual. But game jams are they're where you get together for a weekend or for one day or for however long, and you just kind of you work with a team on making one idea, and you try to get that idea out the door as much as possible in a really constrained period of time. And it forces you to, as Mark Echo would say, create contents under pressure. It forces you to not spend too long iterating any particular idea and just getting it into execution phase and then getting some sort of build made. So I think you would have a lot of fun with that, and it kind of creates an environment where the ideas you come up with are not anything you're necessarily holding on to from the past. Like, you can all brainstorm it together live in the future or in the moment. So I think that is the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about your habits. Consider that. Hey, Woolie, I'm a new listener, viewer of your work, and I've been loving the hell out of it, especially the Jet Set videos. Those are my baby. Castle Super Beast is the longest and comfortably digestible podcast. Thank you. Woolie Will Figure It Out has been resonant with me for the creative anxieties and self-destructive tendencies. Wanted to contribute with a few questions, experiences. 1, have you struggled with self-perception and the identity of a creative? I still frequently find myself skirting the label of artist for my friends to remind me that I've actually yet to produce some finished products and my merit of having created anything. You are allowed to call yourself a creative. Okay, right. So your friends have done things and you haven't, and so you find yourself not wanting to call yourself a creative. Got it. And 2, have you ever found yourself trying to purchase your way into creativity? I know a craftsman blames his tools, and the real artist can do anything with a number 2 pencil, but I find myself thinking that I'd definitely draw more if I had some fancy pens, or if I definitely make music, or I definitely start making music once I had a nice MIDI controller just to sit in a box. I'm a spoiled rich kid, but you can't buy discipline and practice. Thanks, keep up the great work. Thank you, says Jay. So, have I ever struggled with self-perception and the identity of a creative? Yeah, I'd say so. I feel that's accurate. I feel that, as someone who's gone to school with, like, people who have successfully graduated into, like, full-on art careers and whatnot, and as someone that's constantly been surrounded by people that I felt have been more talented than me in things that I'm not interested in and in things that I am, it is a thing that comes to mind from time to time. But at the same time, I know that I have made things and I have done things, and there's not, like, any particular, like, I can't point back to say Jack and the End of the World and be like, well, here's the book. I've done it. You can call me a creative now. But, I feel that my brain just defaults to this mode, and I spend such an unbalanced amount of time thinking about things from a creative point of view. I spend a lot of time, like, analyzing the media that I'm consuming, or trying to think about what else is going on with it besides what's happening in an obvious way. I'm not always successful at that, but it's where my brain tends to go. So it's weird, like, in the sense that I know that it can feel sometimes like it's not like you don't deserve it because you haven't put out the work. But I know that, like, it's what my brain does most of the day, so I wouldn't know what else to call it, I mean, you could, like, some people would just say, like, oh, maybe you're just an analyst or a critic or something like that. And, that could be the case, but I feel that, like, I'm like, no, because I also do spend a lot of that time envisioning what, like, a brand new take on this thing could be. And then I kind of walk that through a little bit of a mild, sketchy process of, like, well, okay, this could go this way, and then you could introduce this and revisit this topic like that, and then incorporate another. And then before I know it, I'm, like, kind of stuck in a little bubble of, like, oh man, this would be so cool, So, I think recent example was, like, I was on the plane, heading over to, I think we were heading to MagFest. And I was like, I want to, like, make I want a new intro for this fighting game show that I'm going to be starting soon, and I kind of thought about, like, get into fighting games, and I thought about what if this intro was like a love letter to the genre, you know? And I was like, and like, I started kind of going through and I'm like, okay, what would that consist of? It would be like, maybe we'd start in the beginning and move forward through time and so on. And I kind of eventually got to a point where I was just thinking about like, the Last Blade 2 theme song, right? In the character select screen and the flute that's going. And then after like doing a loop or two of the flute, I kind of just went, let's get it on now. Select to make the first pick. Let's get it on now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And went, oh fuck, Third Strike blends really well with this. That's interesting. Okay. And like that kind of blend set off what that set the tone for the rest of what I wanted that intro to be. And then, you know, later on the visuals with the idea of the characters and all coming together with silhouettes to create the heart and stuff. Like, it's so interesting because when I talked to Tim Mello about the music, I kind of listed out some of the tracks and I included a huge list of references of things to sample and grab from. And he independently grabbed that Last Blade and Third Strike and pulled it together in a way that was exactly the thing that I thought about when I was going through when I was creating this idea in my head of like what I want this mashup to be. So like he heard it and I listed them right up top, you know, it was like these two songs and then here's all these. And like that blend came together exactly so well in such a way that like, you know, we saw the same thing. And like, I'm like, that's amazing. I was super happy that happened. So like, I kind of just had this whole moment and sitting on the plane orchestrating this project in my head. And like, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't playing anything or reading anything. I was just sitting there staring at the floor. And, like my girl was next to me and she's like, are you okay? You've just been staring at the wall for like a while now. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, just creating in my head, you know? And she's like, oh, okay, I'll leave you to it, you know? But it's like, yeah, after when I have these like moments like that and thoughts, then I kind of, I don't know what else to describe myself as, you know? So I'd have to say that it leans towards being a creative. It just, it seems the most accurate description. Have I found myself trying to purchase my way into creativity? To a degree, you know, I bought a Wacom tablet and then I wanted to eventually get a Cintiq, and I found myself eyeing these expensive, you know, Cintiqs and hoping that I could get that level up, and suddenly that would make my art better, you know. And in art school, like buying the most expensive Copic markers and like getting the big sets of airbrush paints, and you know, there's a lot that you kind of can spend your money on. But you learn very quickly that it has nothing to do with that. Like, yes, I bought the little statue of the wooden manga figure that you can pose to create your proportions and reference. But it's like, you know, at the end of the day, like, yeah, you don't have to have someone tell you that it's going to take a lot more than that. Like, you very quickly come to realize after using all these tools and still making something that you think looks like ass, that you're like, oh no, these tools are not going to save me. You know, it like, spend the money and get there, but within like a matter of like, what, hours, you kind of realize, you know what, nope, I still don't know the rules. And I still just haven't done this enough. It's just a matter of sinking time in. It has nothing to do with the tools you have. But the tools can definitely mask some issues sometimes. They let you get away with bullshit sometimes, but, you know, you dig a little deeper and you go further into it. And like anyone who has the ability to, anyone who has the skill will see that, like, no, you're just kind of masking, you're using tricks to show that you don't know what you're doing. You know, shout outs to anyone who's drawn figures in grade school or in early high school where you have these cool characters, but their hands are behind their backs because you don't know how to draw hands. You know, shout outs to drawing people with like no shading, because shading is hard. So we'll just keep it loose and sketchy, because the less the detail we need to actually commit to, the better. Like, you know, it becomes obvious to people that do know the rules when you don't know them. But that's always why the whole thing with breaking the rules is once you learn the rules, you're allowed to break them. But if you break them before that, then your thing looks like a mess. So, I'm not I'm not too worried about it, but yes, I have done that in the past, and I think anybody who has learned immediately that it doesn't work. Let's take one more from Ben. Hey, Woolie. This podcast works really well for overcoming failure, but what about other negative aspects of creativity? What about envy? Sometimes I wish I had my friends' accomplishments, even though I want to simply be proud of them. I can't help but compare my lack of progress to their actual progress. For me, the best method is to keep the proverbial blinders on and focus on my own business. Never compare your day-to-day with someone else's highlight reel. Or, what about when you just don't like something your friend makes? Do you offer empty praise, keep your mouth shut, critique constructively? Have you ever had to deal with this? Podcast is great. Can't wait to hear more. Much love, Ben. P.S. I hope you understand that the Zaibatsu was in no way a failure. It was a success that ran its course. Perspective, but thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, let's back that up a little bit. What about envy? Sometimes I wish I had my friends' accomplishments. What about the negative aspects of creativity? First thing that comes to mind with that is I've absolutely had that, and definitely still do to a degree. I mean, I mean, there's the little things out there where it's like, okay, we all have our talents and things that like we succeed at better than others, but I mean, God, like there's. I feel like there's always definitely something in me that is, I'm envious. I feel like I'm, to be perfectly honest, envious of a lot of things. I think the fact that I'm trying to, I've spent so much time and effort trying to just like get myself into shape in a certain way. For example, trying to lose all this weight and whatnot comes from being envious of people who are in shape, who have not been overweight their entire lives. I think the drive to, be successful in things is based on passion, but there's definitely a part of it in there that as well, that is like, there's something inside of me that, I think about like people who have, said that, I wouldn't be able to accomplish certain things and that, like I'm just not capable of whatever. And I keep in mind the idea of success is the best revenge. That's a term, that's a thing that I would think about a lot. So, it's not always pure, I guess. There's always definitely something ugly in there that I know that I definitely have. I think about people that are more successful at the same things that I do. And I think about the ways that like a brilliant mind can take what you do, summarize it, make it funnier and shorter and put it out there. And people will like absolutely just be like, oh yeah, that 100% more relatable. And I'm like, damn, like, fuck, why didn't I think of that? Like there's that thought happens a lot of the time. And I mean, to bring it closer to home, I feel like if we're going to talk about the Zaibatsu, I mean, with each of those guys, I feel like definitely vulnerable and envious of traits that I don't feel I have. I mean, to begin with, like, we talk about the fact that Matt and Pat, like, they're the two best friends, like that took off in a way that, quite frankly, like, even though Matt originally approached me about the idea, I don't know if like my character, I don't think I have the wit and the level of like, I don't think I was funny enough, especially back then, like that would have necessarily guaranteed that would have taken off in the same way, and that's because I'm envious of the fact that both Matt and Pat are like lightning quick on the wit, and Liam as well with the burns, I think the fact that like all three of those guys have minds that just race to the funniest thing in such a short period of time before the moment is gone, is what makes them successful at it. And I feel that, I know that the funny thing is like, for me, it's like 5 minutes away. If I can remember who the person was, if I could remember the reference, I have to sometimes stop and go, oh, geez, what was it called again? And by that moment, it's gone. Like, I'm not that fast on it, right? My brain just lags on getting to the funniest bit or the funny, and I know that that's a huge part of things. So I'm definitely envious of the fact that like they're just naturally that hilarious, or have the anecdotes, right, to pull into a situation to make it funnier. I'm envious of the fact that I know that like Matt is really just good at networking and getting himself out there and just making connections with, you know, cons and people and fellow YouTubers, and has made a ton of like, you know, just friends and outreach. And he's, you know, able to like make these connections with folks out in LA and do all this stuff that I'm like, yeah, if I just put myself out there more and actually gave it a shot, it could work as well. But I think that like he just naturally has that ability and is better at that. So, you know, and also like makes the effort to like go and travel and go to these cons and make these friends and such. So I'm envious of that. I'm envious of the fact that Liam has a really like keen eye for like taking like a game concept and just trimming the fat down and finding the most interesting part and just kind of teasing it out. Like whenever we've talked about game ideas or whenever he's talked to me about his ideas, like it's always been really impressive how like you take a raw concept and just like trim out the excess and go like, here's the core bit. This is what's fun. This is what should be focused on. And like, it's been like, fuck, like that is a talent. Like no wonder, you know, he's like in this world. It's like he's got that piece, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I think the fact that Pat like has the ability to like just say the most insane shit and like more or less get away with it, because like everyone can, not everyone, but it's like there's enough of an understanding now about like the tone of a person that Pat is, that like there's no expectations really of like anything, but like no one's gonna know. People that know him are not really getting upset at what they're hearing. They're just going, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. And that's hilarious. And that's about it. Or the other way around, right? There's never that like, not to say there's never, that's not true. There's people that get upset at the things that like we say and like, and argue it, and crazy talk is one of the biggest things, right? But the point is that like, you know, as he pointed out himself in one of the recent podcasts, it's like, Woolie, like the fact that, like the fact, or as I've been told directly to myself, it's like the fact that you take a reasonable stance on things means I'm gonna get more upset at you when you say something unreasonable, versus where people just go, oh, Pat, you know, and I'm like, man, like that persona and that sort of like that very like I don't give a fuck conviction is something that creates bulletproof armor in terms of like people coming at you or even thinking about like what you're saying in too much of a negative way, because ultimately they're going to see it as something hilarious as opposed to like being actually upset with you, you know? So that's a trait that I'm like, fuck, I wish I had that ability, you know, but I know that I have other things that I do, but I feel like I'm, you know, that's something that I look at and go like, yeah, that would make a lot of my points easier to make if I could rely on the fact that people are not actually going to, like get pitchforks out as much as they're going to just either agree with it or disagree and shrug it off, and not necessarily disagree and then attack over it type of thing. So, I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but either way, like these are all traits that I've seen with the guys that I'm like, yeah, man, I fucking like, I wish I had that and I'd use that in a heartbeat to do something. I don't know what, but, it's very common. I think, I would hope, I would hope it's very common, because it's something that I feel, on a regular basis, or at the very least, it's not, I don't want to say regular basis, but I feel it every time I hit a moment where if I had that buff or that stat, this wouldn't apply to me. So I feel it when it's absent, when I you know what I mean? When I take damage and I go, I wish I had that resistance. I wish I had that contact to reach out to go to that con. I wish I had that ability to, you know, really like get that game idea down to what it should have been and convey that to the team back in the day. You know, I wish I had the ability to say this in the right way or in such a way that it's like, I at the very least coming across more true to my my intent versus whatever non-clear version of it is. So that is something I do deal with. When I don't like something my friend makes, do I offer empty praise or keep my mouth shut or critique constructively? Depends on how close I am to that friend. For the most part, I'm supportive of my friend's efforts overall in pretty much anything they do, and I am if I genuinely like it, I'm genuinely going to praise it. I'm going to, push it and retweet the shit out of it and do all of that. If I don't, I tend to keep my mouth shut, I think. But it also depends on how close, right? If it's a close friend, I'll do more than keep my mouth shut. I'll also talk to them about it. I don't like doing that unsolicited, quite frankly. But yeah, I think my rule of thumb is just, if I dig it, I'm going to push it. If I don't dig it, I won't necessarily. At the same time, a lot of shit comes and goes, and I don't even notice it because I'm not aware of the fact that it exists, quite honestly. And I don't keep up to date, unfortunately, on a lot of my friends' things as much as I should. But I'm going to push what I like. I'm going to not push what I don't like. I'm going to stay silent about it for the most part. And if they ask for my opinion, then I will give it to them constructively. And maybe if it's someone that I see making a constant mistake that's over and over and over again, and then it comes up in a way, then I might be like, hey, this came to mind, and I don't know what you think about this, and try to have a candid conversation about them. That's with them, rather. That's kind of my thought on it. But I haven't really concluded anything else besides that, I think. Hey there, we're back at the present, and we're going to close out with one last one from Zeltis. Woolie, I absolutely loved hearing you talk about anxiety on the podcast. I can relate with you that up until about a year ago, I never truly felt anxiety on an extreme level. The physical side effects your mind can put you through is as fascinating as it is terrifying. Before, I just helped friends and watched them suffer through it, but I never had that personal experience that let me truly empathize with them. So for a question, what was an experience that opened your eyes to allow you to connect with people on a new level? With the greatest hopes, Zeltis. Well, you're not going to get a better answer, Zeltis, than like the one you just stated, because quite frankly, in all the years I've been alive, the most recent and powerful example has been actually experiencing anxiety attacks for the first time. I mean, this is a whole new phenomenon to me that, like I said, I've dealt with multiple discomforts and issues over the years. I've had all kinds of, there's a lot that I've been through that I feel, did not, cause this sort of reaction. I mean, literally like having, a discussion about like leaving my family and being ostracized because of religious beliefs didn't result in like any sort of anxiety on the level that I've been feeling. You know what I mean? Like it really is, I can't describe how much this is like something that I'm unfamiliar with, but at the same time familiar with from a third person point of view. So suddenly when going through each and every one of those like actual physical symptoms, it was like in that analysis mode, in that mode where I was like, step out and like observe yourself and how this is happening and what's actually happening to you. That was when it just made everything click with like, I fully understand what it was like when I watched and had friends going through similar struggles like this. Like it really is something that like, you experience it, then you get it, and then you go, okay. Like, I want to say that as much as I knew the right things to say, like until I actually experienced it, I want to say that like I really didn't understand how little control you have Like, I always am so used to how much in control I am over my body in most of my life. And, you know, occasionally, like, you're sick or something goes bad, or, you know, there's little moments of loss of control here or there where it dials up. And if you have the flu, then it goes really high for a little bit and then comes back down and whatnot. But, like, these burst triggers of, like, you have zero control for the rest of the day, good luck, right, is just like, whoa, I can't, like, I'm so not used to experiencing that. And now that I have, yeah, it absolutely increases your capacity for empathy, and I think your ability to just, like, see someone else going through something similar and be like, yep, been there, understand that, and just, like, know how to know what they're going through, and, like, perhaps give them even, you know, better assistance in a way. It's something that, like, it's interesting because, like, despite the fact that there's been a you know, kind of a resetting period that I've gone through recently where it's been fine, there's been recent triggers where it's kind of come back up, and you know, it's funny almost to be like, okay, here we are, there it is again, right? Just like it was a couple months ago. And, like, immediately you back into analysis mode. Like, as soon as the first triggers start going through, I'm like, I'm also like a stand beside myself looking at the user, you know, and, like, just assessing what's happening as it's going down. And it you know, it's something where when that's going down, I'm trying really hard to, like, as I categorize what's happening to me, like, use that categorization as a way to lessen its effect. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're kind of, like, breathing heavily or, like, starting to feel cold and such, like, I'm kind of, like, thinking about what's happening as a way of not increasing the symptom in a way. Because it's like, if you kind of, like, think about what's happening and you kind of panic as a result, it might make things worse or exacerbate the situation, you know? Like, so being fully aware of the fact that giving any one of these things the ability to spiral further just based on how you mentally process it and where your cognition's at, that objective, that zoom out approach is now happening instantaneously the moment I start to feel it, you know? What I'm looking forward to, but also not looking forward to, is, like, experiencing this in, like, so far I've experienced it more or less, like, in the comfort of my own home, where I could isolate and be away from everyone and everything and just kind of shut the world down. And that makes it easier to reset. But I'm not looking forward to what it'll be like if this ever happens in a place where I don't get the option to do that, to withdraw and reset, and what my coping methods are going to be for that type of environment, you know? And other situations in the future where it might become an unexpected thing where I don't even have the time to put myself in the right space to handle it. So there's all kinds of aspects I'm preemptively, like, positioning myself and anticipating will occur if this is something that I have, and this is something I'm going to be dealing with for a very long period of time. Then I need to anticipate that it might sometimes occur in not comforting circumstances. It might sometimes occur in places and times that are maximum inconvenient. And, like, I'm already trying to think of ways to handle that as well. So, like, the learning process continues, and as much as I'm able to now fully empathize and fully understand this type of thing with others, for those who've been through this in ways that I'm describing, where you're, like, in the middle of a room full of people that are all staring at you while it's happening, or, you know, who knows what else. But, like, that's something I'd love to hear about, and, like, I'd love to hear what methods work in that type of place, because I don't think I think a lot of what I've figured out is kind of handcuffed to your ability to withdraw. And I think the fact that I'm ambiverted means that, like, there's a natural withdrawing period that I always kind of try to force myself to have because I need my alone time. And, you know, in a situation where you are feeling an anxiety attack, but you have no ability to completely withdraw, I'd like to know what coping methods would apply there, because that might happen. That might happen someday, you know? But thank you. I'm glad you pointed that out, because it feels like that has been the best new thing. It's the worst new thing, but as a result, it has been the best new way to empathize with people that have been through similar experiences. So, cheers.